Were you invited to their wedding?
Yeah. Yes.
And did you attend?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just generally describe for us what the wedding was like?
It was definitely a predominantly Amber event in the sense that a large percentage of the guests were her friends and family. And, you know, a lot of his friends and family couldn't make it because it seemed to happen so quickly. And yeah, they seemed to be having, her and her friends seemed to be having a wonderful time.
Where did the wedding take place?
On Johnny's Island in the Bahamas.
Okay. And did you have any interactions with Miss Heard during this time period? Or
yes.
Did you talk to Miss Heard when you were at the wedding?
Yeah. You know, there were dinners, and it was certainly a celebration every day. You know, Amber and her friend Rocky gave me my first taste of MDMA. You know, and everyone, you know, like all her friends were on it, and so I tried that for the first time with them. Yeah, it was like a party atmosphere.
Okay. Just briefly, can you sketch out for us in a little more detail how you came to take MDMA on that at the wedding? Oh,
well, it was evening time. I think I was a bit hungover from the day before, and I can imagine those two saw me, and when they first dropped the pill into my hand, I thought it was like a supplement, like a vitamin supplement to make me feel better, but no, they quickly said it was MDMA, and I kind of decided to throw caution to the wind and just try it.
Okay. You mentioned that you traveled with Mr. Depp and Miss Heard to Japan and Berlin and possibly other locations as well. Can you tell us where else you traveled with them?
Well, after the wedding, we headed to Australia.
And why did you go to Australia?
Because that's where Johnny would be shooting Pirates 5.
Okay, and approximately when do you think you were in Australia?
I think that I flew with Johnny and Jerry Judge and Stephen and a few others. I think that was February. And Johnny stayed in a house, and Stephen and I were based like a 35-minute drive away on the shoreline in the hotels. And I think Amber flew in a while afterwards.
Okay. You said you thought it was February. Do you recall the year?
Yes, I do. 2015.
Okay. So just so we have the cast of characters clear, who from this group was in Australia at this point?
So we've got, on the plane that I was on, it was Johnny, Jerry Judge, Stephen Duters, Debbie Lloyd, and myself. And maybe one other.
Okay. You mentioned a name there I don't think we've heard before. Can you just tell the jury quickly who Debbie Lloyd is?
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we just have to take a few housekeeping matters up, so we're just going to have you take a recess for a few minutes, okay? So again, no outside research and don't talk to anybody, okay? All right. Ms. Duders, I just had a question for you. Have you been watching the trial this past week?
I've seen clips of it online, yeah.
You've been watching, so you have seen parts of this trial?
Yeah.
Okay, and witness testimonies?
Yeah, I've seen clips of.
You've seen it, thanks. All right, does anybody have any follow-up questions?
Ms. Duders, have you been watching?
It doesn't matter, she's been watching clips of witness testimony. All right, you're excused, ma'am, you can have, you're excused.
Okay.
Thank you. I will instruct the jury, they'll have to strike the testimony of Ms. Duders. There's a rule on witnesses, Mr. Moniz.
Understood, Your Honor. This is
All
the
right.
first we're.
I believe that. I have no doubt in my mind that this is the first you've heard of it. Have a good day, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Hopp, I got it the first time. Thank you. Have a good day, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Hopp, I got it the first time. Thank you.
Okay, so still with us, we have criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer. And Josh, what we just saw, that witness, an important witness for Johnny Depp's team in his defamation case against his ex-wife Amber Heard, she has been excused. This is Gina Duders, who appears to be a friend had been a friend of Heard as well, not just Depp. But there she admits that she had been watching clips of this trial, and so she was excused by the judge. Here are live images inside the courtroom in Fairfax, Virginia, of course, where this trial is underway. What's your reaction to this latest development?
It's a huge disruption and distraction. These trials, the amount of planning, and I know, Joy, you've been a lawyer, you work with all these lawyers and trials, you know how much planning goes into a more modest trial. This is tens of millions of dollars. These are huge teams. And for a witness to basically disobey the rules to the extent they get booted, wow, who screwed up? Who didn't tell this witness or watch this witness or control this witness to ensure that they were going to be available? This is a massive blow. We don't know exactly what part of the story this witness was going to present, only that the witness is not going to be available. Violation of the sequestration rules, violation of pretrial orders. You know, the lawyers are going to get a pretty stern talking to from the judge, because this is 101 stuff. Do not let your witnesses observe, watch, or learn about the trial. It violates the integrity of the entire process.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is video of this witness taken just moments ago. And it should be noted that the judge did side with the defense that her testimony should be stricken from the record. But Josh, I mean, we all know human beings, you can't unhear what you just heard.
Well, and that's one of the issues. And, you know, talk about whether someone's going to want to spend money and appeal this case. Boom, there's one of your first of what are likely going to be many appealable issues, in that this witness presented evidence that it's impossible to put back in the bottle. This stuff's out. The jury saw it. The jury can listen to the judge's instructions. But we all know, just like you're saying, they can't unhear stuff. There's actually the evidentiary rule, effect on hearer. When the truth or falsity of the statement doesn't matter at all. It's what the effect of merely hearing these statements can be on the perspective of a witness. So this is a huge upset from the very beginning. The defense scored mega points, probably with the jury as well as with the judge, and the plaintiff's team looks unprofessional. It's not a good way to get out of the blocks.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, and you've come down and said it actually benefits the defense, but her testimony benefits Johnny Depp's team, the plaintiffs here, right? So do you think in the short term it's kind of a win for them, but then maybe it comes up on appeal?
It's a win because of what's already out and the fact that that can never be put back. But by leaving that story not fully told, it's a scar on this trial. And any juror looking at this trial is going to see this big scar. And that's part of the story that they didn't get to hear. They're not going to get a satisfactory explanation of what's happening from the judge, how the jurors create questions in their own minds or questions as a group about what happened with this witness, why stuff isn't happening the way it's supposed to, why the plaintiff's team seems so disheveled, what happened with the scheduling. Civil trials are very often set up to be smooth. This is a big earthquake for this trial.
Yeah, and we want to listen to what the judge has to say on this matter. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Yeah, it really is quite odd, especially for somebody who identifies themselves on social media as a journalist. So Eve Barlow is a woman who has arrived, or at least did arrive at the courthouse each day last week with Amber Heard riding in her vehicle. And she was actually seated in the front row that is reserved for members of Amber Heard's legal team. Well, after this whole dust-up with Gina Deuters last week, there was like a commotion in the courtroom, and we really didn't know what was going on because all of the lawyers were up at the bench with Judge Ascarati, and we're all thinking to ourselves, okay, so what is going on here? Well, it turns out that the reason that the judge even asked Gina Deuters about whether or not she had been watching the trial was because Eve Barlow, according to what we've learned from both a hearing that occurred on Friday when cameras were not in the courtroom, but also from an order that the judge issued, Eve Barlow actually was in the courtroom on her cell phone. She was tweeting and she was texting, and she apparently handed her cell phone to Amber Heard's lawyer while Gina Deuters was on the stand. And we've learned from that hearing that occurred without cameras on Friday of last week that she passed her phone to the lawyer, Ben Rottenborn, who then approached the judge, showed them an Instagram post that belonged to Gina Deuters in which she was discussing the trial and opining on the trial. And that is what prompted the judge to question Gina Deuters outside the presence of the jury. And you saw that she answered that, yes, she had indeed seen some clips of the testimony online. Well, the problem with all of this is that that Instagram post that prompted the judge to question Gina Deuters was not from this week and not from this trial. It was from January of 2021. And Gina Deuters had posted about the libel case that was going on in England at that time. So the attorney, Ben Rottenborn, had represented this. We don't know if it was any fault of his own or if he was presented this information and it was misrepresented to him, but he presented this to the judge as being from this trial. Guess what? It wasn't. It was over a year old. So Ben Chu, the attorney for Johnny Depp, brings this up during this hearing on Friday. The judge is livid because Eve Barlow was not even supposed to be on her cell phone. The only people in that courtroom who can be on their electronics, have a laptop, a cell phone, anything, are the legal team, members of the legal team, lawyers. She is not. And after this whole thing happened with Gina Deuters being, kicked out of the courtroom, essentially being told, you know, ma'am, you're excused. Your testimony will be stricken from the record. Eve Barlow and another woman were told to move to the back of the courtroom, out of that front row, as were members of Johnny Depp's family and his team, who were sitting in that front row reserved only for lawyers and members of the legal team. All of those people were told to move back. Well, guess who's sitting right behind me, Bob? I have no idea who this woman is. It's this Eve Barlow. I see her sitting there, and she's got her cell phone out. So a short time passes, the testimony resumes. They start playing Dr. Kipper's videotape testimony, and I hear a bit of a commotion. I look back, there's a deputy behind me approaching her, and she's got her cell phone out. The deputy takes her out of the courtroom. 2 other deputies are with him. Then, you know, whatever happens, happens out in the hallway. She comes back in a short time later. She sits again on the bench behind me. She yet again then has her cell phone out. I have no idea what was going on or what was happening, but this woman was not supposed to have a cell phone. So Judge Askarati, during this hearing on Friday, was livid when she found out that this woman had been tweeting from the courtroom and texting from the courtroom. Also livid about this whole, you know, more than a year-old Instagram post. The judge didn't have any idea about Instagram. She doesn't know anything about it. It being presented to her and misrepresented to her by the attorneys. So it was crazy. Eve Barlow was then barred from the courtroom. We first told you about that on Friday, that she has been banned for the remainder of the trial from the courtroom. We started doing some digging. We started looking around, trying to find out why. Nobody would tell us. Well, then on Saturday morning, I found out. This is why. And so if you're a member of the general public or a reporter or anyone, this is the only thing you can have, right? This is how I'm reporting on this case. I had to go and buy this last week. I can't tell you the last time I took notes in a criminal trial or anything. I usually have a laptop. I'm now using this notebook. So that is why Eve Barlow was barred from the courtroom. The judge very, very unhappy in finding out that her orders had been violated.
Well, a great scoop that you got there, Anjanette, for sure. But I want to go down to some basics here. Gina Deuters was in the middle of testifying here. She's thrown off unceremoniously in front of the jury. Her testimony is stricken. It turns out that, to your point, that this Ms. Barlow woman had given the lawyers this information that was from a year ago. It is true that Deuters did say that she was looking at the clips of this trial. So that's the judge wanted to end it. My experience has been in situations like this, Anjanette, that the judge goes through a much more exhaustive questioning of these witnesses because, in essence, Johnny Depp was deprived of a crucial witness in this case. So my questions to you, Anjanette, first of all, was there an order of the court that none of the witnesses could look at any of the trial? Was this communicated to the witnesses by the court directly? Was it the responsibility of the lawyers to do it? And I hate to keep piling on with questions, but my last one is, couldn't there have been of a less obtrusive thing where the judge said the testimony will stand, but ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you can assess her credibility and take it against her that she violated a court order, assuming, Anjanette, there isn't even one there. Talk to me about all this.
Well, you know, I think we were all surprised at how quickly that happened because there wasn't more questioning as to whether or not she had watched these clips intentionally, whether she had come across them, whether they were snippets, you know, what have you. But the witnesses in this case are not supposed to be watching the testimony. There is a sequestration order, meaning they're not supposed to be sitting in the trial. And we saw last week when Isaac Baruch, you know, people loved his testimony. They didn't know if he would be recalled or not, and he may be recalled. So then he was going to sit down in the gallery. He left the courtroom because he may be recalled again, either by Johnny Depp's side, who knows, maybe Amber Heard's side calls him during their case. We just don't know who might recall him, but it sounds like Depp's team could possibly do that. So he wasn't allowed in. So this was very clear. it sounds like this had been made clear to these witnesses that they shouldn't be watching any of the testimony or any of the trial online. I was a little surprised that the judge didn't ask more questions regarding how much she had seen, how she had come to see it, things of that nature. But it was interesting during that hearing that took place on Friday, Ben Chu, the lawyer for Johnny Depp, said that she was properly excluded. So it leads me to believe that they did some digging and maybe some questioning of her and found out that maybe she had seen more of the trial than she really should have, more than just like an innocent thing where you come across something online and then you shut down the laptop.